This is the Canon EOS R7, and in my time of reviewing gear, I have never been asked to review a specific camera more than this. As far as size goes, this camera is about the same size as the original EOS R, but with some updated features. First, you'll find a joystick with a programmable dial, dual SD card slots, variety of I/O ports, and a physical switch to toggle between autofocus and manual focus. But at the heart of this camera is Canon's first APS-C size sensor with the RF mount. This is a 32 megapixel sensor that can capture stunning photos and has a video resolution at up to 4K 60 frames per second with IBIS. Although the sensor is amazing, it's what the RF mount provides that makes this camera incredible. As far as I'm concerned, it's the RF mount that makes this camera truly special. But first, let's talk about video. So when it comes to video, this camera can shoot at 4K, 24, 30, and 60 frames per second with no record limit. Now when shooting in 24 or 30 frames per second in 4K, the camera gives you an optional fine mode, which actually allows you to downsample the full sensor of 7K to that 4K image, allowing you to get something that is significantly sharper. Canon also gave you the option of shooting in C-Log 3, which is gonna give you 10-bit recording, which not only is gonna give you more dynamic range, but it also just gives you more data overall when editing your footage later in post. Now I particularly found this feature to be helpful, especially when shooting outdoors in broad daylight. Because it has so much dynamic range, I was able to preserve not only my shadows, but also the highlights, which are typically the first thing to go when shooting with cameras of this price point. Now I know for a lot of creators looking at this camera, autofocus is going to be a huge deciding feature, and I can tell you that this camera's autofocus is absolutely amazing. There's really no reason to spend too much time on it because you're getting the same autofocus features that you got in the EOS R3, 5, and 6. This autofocus honestly rarely ever misses. It actually gives you 3 different types of subjects that you can focus on, whether that's people, cars, or animals. You're able to make sure that you are getting your focus. And when it comes to people focusing, not only is it going to give you the eye autofocus, which we've all come to love, but you also get facial recognition as well as torso recognition. So even if your subject turns away from you, it's still going to be able to keep that focus on them. This autofocus is so good that I would say that you can even trust it even if you can't monitor the camera. So for example, if you're filming yourself or you're shooting and you can't be right next to the camera, you can almost always trust that this autofocus is gonna get you the perfect shot. Now this autofocus isn't just great in video mode, but it's also just as stellar in photo mode. Speaking of photo mode, this is a photography camera first, although it does have fantastic video specs. When it comes to photos, if you're shooting with the electronic shutter, you can shoot this camera at a staggering 30 frames per second. But you don't always have to shoot it in an electronic shutter. I personally found that this camera can take fantastic photos, and it's pretty much, again, what you can expect from all the high-end Canon cameras. Now, before we hop into why I personally think that the mount of this camera is really what makes this camera so special, let's thank today's video sponsor, Artlist, who is happy to give everyone who's watching this video 2 free months when they use the link down below in the description. See, Artlist is an online platform that allows you to download unlimited amounts of music to use on all of your video projects. Whether that's here on YouTube or for commercial projects, you can download this music and use it in your videos because it is all royalty free. Now, Artlist doesn't just allow you to have unlimited downloads of music, but you can also download unlimited sound effects in order to take your video edits to the next level. Another thing that I love about Artlist is that they also have ArtGrid, which is their online platform for stock video. And it's very similar to how Artlist works, where you just pay a monthly fee and you can use and download an unlimited amount of stock video to use in your commercial projects as well. If you've ever been thinking about signing up for Artlist, personally, I think now is the best time to do it. And if you even liked that music that you heard at the beginning of this video and throughout this video, that's exactly where this came from. Personally, I use Artlist for all of my commercial projects, and it's my go-to site for creating videos. So if you are looking for a great place to get music for your videos, Artlist is the way to do it. Links down below in the description. So if I'm saying all these good things about this camera, does this mean that this is the perfect camera for content creators? Well, honestly, I think there might be a case to be made here. And it's not just because of the specs that I mentioned, but also more so because of the upgradability of this camera. See, like Sony and now more recently Nikon, Canon has now attached the mount of their high-end professional lenses onto their new crop sensor body camera. This means that as you continue to shoot with this camera, you can slowly upgrade and purchase more high-end lenses that will work with this camera, but also you know that those lenses will then move over to that higher end camera if you choose to upgrade to a full frame RF camera in the future. See, this mount is so versatile that not only can it work with the RF lenses, but you can also adapt EF lenses to it, even EFS lenses to it, if you're upgrading from an 80D or 90D. And if you just want to go completely overkill in the video world, you can even adapt PL lenses to this camera as well and have some really nice cinema lenses. Now, one of the big questions with this crop sensor and with the RF mount is, does this camera work with Canon's native Speedbooster? Now, this was a huge question, and I can confirm that yes, you can put the RF Speedbooster on this camera. However, it comes with a massive catch. Now, although using the Speedbooster on this camera is not officially supported by Canon, I will say that if you are going to try to go about using this, you're going to have to turn the IBIS off. It just absolutely freaks out as far as the image is concerned. I'm not sure if this has to do with the fact that you're also magnifying the movement of the actual IBIS. I will say that it does do a lot as far as helping you get your sensor closer to that of full frame, but with the huge caveat of not being able to use IBIS at the same time. Now, hopefully Canon can address this just using a firmware update, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. So be sure to hit the subscribe button, because if they do announce an update, I'll be sure to make a video about it. I guess since we're already talking about one of the huge negatives, let's go ahead and touch on a couple other ones that you should at least be aware of, starting with that 4K 60 that I talked about earlier. Now, as I mentioned, yes, the camera does shoot in 4K 60. However, it's going to do a crop on the sensor. Now, most cameras, especially more affordable cameras, are pretty well known for this. However, when you're looking at an APS-C size sensor that already has a 1.6 times crop, and then you add on an additional 1.8 times crops to that in order to have 4K 60, it really starts to shrink your overall frame. This is gonna make it more difficult to get wide angle shots when shooting in 4K 60. Another sort of downside of this camera is, as I mentioned, it does have that programmable wheel at the top, but there's only one other, which means if you are trying to adjust your exposure triangle, you're kind of one wheel short. Now, depending on the lens that you're using, you might be able to use the programmable wheel at the front of your RF lens in order to kind of fix this caveat, but it is a downside of the camera itself. Now, as far as negatives go, that's really about all that I've been able to find with this camera. I mean, there's actually a lot more benefits that outweigh those negatives. For example, I don't even think I mentioned it yet, but this camera has a fully articulating screen, which is kind of common on most cameras of today's time, but it is nice to see it on this camera, especially if you are a content creator. On top of that, Canon has added some of their more newer high-end professional features to this camera. For example, the smart hot shoe. This is something that was found on the R5C, and now they have brought it all the way down to the R7. This is going to allow you to have smart accessories such as microphones that can go directly into the hot shoe, allowing you not to have to actually plug a cable into your camera. So I know the big question, should you buy this camera? Well, if you've been watching this video, you probably already know my answer, and that's probably a yes. I mean, if you are looking to get into the Canon ecosystem, or you're looking to add a secondary camera to your Canon ecosystem, this is a fantastic entry buy. I mean, because of the price and all these amazing features that you're getting, Canon has never really come out with anything quite like it. And if you want to be a part of the Canon world, this is a really great way to get started. Now, if you are planning on buying this camera, let me break down a couple key nuggets here that is gonna help save you a lot of money and make your experience way better on how you should buy this camera. Now, for starters, I personally recommend buying this camera body only. At that price point, this camera comes in at just under $1,500. The reason why I recommend buying it body only is because the lens that comes with it is not great. However, because Canon has already come out with so many amazing RF lenses, there are tons of purchasing options on the market, new and used. For example, one of my favorite lenses that Canon has actually come out for the RF lens is their upgraded RF Nifty 50. This is the 51.8. Canon has also come out with a couple other amazing primes such as the 24 and the 35. You can also look at actually just purchasing professional lenses to go on this camera if your budget allows. I personally believe that the best way to go about buying a camera is to buy the body and then buy the right lens for you, not just the lens that comes with the bundle. Now, if you have questions about this camera or you have some additional questions as far as use cases goes, please leave those down in the comments, because I do believe that this camera is going to be one of the most important cameras out there for many creators. But let me know what those are down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future video that we're going to put out here on the R7, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.